I guess we're given a clear to go. So welcome here. This is behind the scenes, a little bit of point of view from the extras. So we were not really given any instructions on what to do. So I guess we'll be taking turns. Let, I would say let's just first introduce ourselves, and then we can sort of briefly talk about our experience, what scenes we were in, and then we'll open up to questions. And so, my name is Michael Kuser. I am a early career scientist at the lab. I am part of the ISR division in the data science team, and I mainly do computer vision AI research and analysis of satellite imagery.
My name is Norman Doggett. I worked in the bioscience division at Los Alamos National Lab for 30 years. I retired 4 years ago this October, and we'll get into our scenes in a little bit.
So, I don't know what to say next, but I guess we can start, right? So, we can maybe. Okay, so first, I would say a lot of people ask us, like, how did you guys end up being an extra? And the answer is simple. Right? There was an ad in the newspaper, and so a few people have told me about it, and I thought it was really cool. And so you sort of sign up. There were two castings, one in Los Alamos and one in Santa Fe, I think. Right? They actually came from the casting agency. They took your headshot, your full body shot, and so then you got a callback a few weeks later. And so, do you have any? Is this the same way that you found out about this?
I had a very similar experience. Yes.
What else? The other thing, what's the process of becoming an extra, right? I mean, you basically get a callback, and then they tell you sort of what like vaguely what kind of role you'll be playing. So like I was a scientist A, meaning there was a scientist that would be there for just multiple days, and then just they call you down to Albuquerque to their like studio where they basically do a dress fitting for you. They take a bunch of photos, and then they give you a free haircut, which is kind of nice. And so that's sort of like the basic process. I don't know if there was a similar experience.
Same process, yes.
Right. And so then you basically get pick dates, or they send you the dates, and then you sign up when you want to be there, and then you basically get a call sheet, right? That was sort of like a new thing, right? So basically, they tell you, approximately like what is you're supposed to be there, but then basically you either get a call in or not, right? And so basically each morning you would have, or like the previous night, you would have to check if you get called in, and so and you really have to check, right? Because sometimes you would have to be there at 5:30 in the morning, right? So a few of the days that I was on the set were shot at Ghost Ranch, right? So that's where they also, I don't know if you saw the movie, but the outdoor scenes that were of the actual city were basically they built a small Los Alamos up across from Ghost Ranch. It wasn't at Ghost Ranch, but right across the street there was sort of like I think more private land. I think I'm not really quite sure owned by who, but was rented out by the studios, and they built a small city with a few of the sets, right? So it's kind of interesting to actually see that a lot of the other scenes are happening up there, and a lot of the indoor stuff is happening actually in Los Alamos, right? A few of the places around here. So that was sort of like Anyway, do you want to say something?
Sure. I can talk about my experiences. I was involved in 2 days of filming on March 24th and 25th in 2022. And this happened in Albuquerque in the old post office building, and it's currently used. It's a building that's on the National Register of Historic Places. It was a federal building and post office building, and it's currently a magnet school in Albuquerque public schools. They had used the second floor of that building for filming the scene that was the scene that is in black and white, where Lewis Strauss enters the room, and there's a small meeting going on, and that meeting is discussing the detection of the first Russian nuclear blast. And so that Russian blast took place on August 29th, 1949. And there was a meeting call that they don't tell you in the movie, but I surely based on the characters, this must have been a meeting that took place in Washington. And so they changed the light fixtures in the room to put period lighting from that time period. They put some other props in the room to make it look toward that time period. But then they did some other things that were kind of odd. They had a bunch of stacked chairs, like the room had been used previously for something else, but there wasn't time to get it ready for this emergency meeting that they were going to have. And you can actually see this in the scene where there's a whole dolly full of 50 or 60 stacked chairs that is kind of in the way, and the characters walk around it and get to their places at the table. Also in that scene, there's a big flower arrangement that's in the center of the table, and the actors are talking across that until finally someone picks it up and moves it off the table in that scene. And so that scene opens with Robert Downey Jr., who plays Lewis Strauss, entering the room, and then seated around that table was Matthew Bodine, who plays Veneer Bush, Dane DeHaan, who plays Kenneth Nichols, and of course, Robert Oppenheimer, played by Cecilian Murphy. He was standing for much of that scene. Josh Harnett, who plays Ernest Lawrence, was at that scene. And then David Krumholtz, who plays Isidore Isaac Robbie, was at that scene. And then also, and so most of those characters were sitting around one center table. I was an extra who was sitting at an adjacent table next to David Krumholtz, who played Isidore Robbie, and standing. And there was actually one other young Los Alamos scientist, and I don't know who his name, who was sitting at that center table, and then another extra sitting at that center table, and then there was an area that was meant to look like it had coffee and refreshments, and there was a group of about 5 or 6 extras standing there, and then David Dashel Malian Dashmalche, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. He played William Borden, and he was the character that appeared at the very end of that scene. He came up and had a private conversation with Robert Oppenheimer standing, and so he was just standing at the periphery, waiting until that scene was filmed. And a couple of interesting footnotes about these 2 days of filming. On the first day, David Krumholtz was supposed to be there, who plays Isidore Isaac Robbie, and he was not there. And so they had a member of the crew just dressed in his clothes, and he sat next to me at this adjacent table. And for that whole first day of filming, he just sat there kind of looking like this down, and they fixed his hair to look like him, but he didn't want to have his face caught in any of the cameras just that was panning by. But he didn't have a speaking role during that first day of filming. And then in the second day of filming, the actor actually showed up, and we were given instructions that as extras, we were not allowed to talk to any of the actors, and certainly not to the director. And we were told what we were supposed to do. We sat quietly at our scenes. We did have some interesting props though. So I was again went through the makeup and the dress like you. I had the free haircut and the shaving that morning. And in fact, they came back after, and they provided breakfast and lunch. And after lunch, they came back with electric razors and they shaved us again to make sure we were clean shaven. For there was not any sort of little shadow on your face from filming all day long, which I thought was interesting. Okay, then then on the second day of filming, David, who plays Isaac Isidore Robbie, had a scene where he needed to get up from the adjoining table we were at and go to the center table, and they were having a discussion about a hydrogen bomb and how the hydrogen bomb would be much more explosive than an atomic bomb, and he had to use a compass to make a circle on the map. And there was a map there. There were two maps on this table, and one map showed Russia and the capital, and another map showed Washington D.C. And the point of this was to discuss what would be the kill zone in a hydrogen bomb blast. And he came up to make this circle on the table, and the I guess the prop crew didn't set up the compass right to begin with, and so the pencil end stuck out much longer than the pointy end. And when he first tried to make that circle, he couldn't do it. He couldn't pivot the compass correctly, and he came back and sat down. And it looked like he had never touched the compass in his life, this poor actor. And so I said, I see what's wrong with your compass. Let me show you how to fix that. And so I adjusted his compass for him. And then on the next take, he went and he made this nice circle, and he came back and thanked me. So I felt kind of privileged that ultimately his character won the Nobel Prize. So I was able to show a Nobel Prize laureate how to use a compass. Another thing that was interesting in that scene is, since I was supposed to be a scientist at this table, they gave me a folder that had classified markings on the top. And having worked at the lab, I was quite used to seeing many documents and folders with classified markings. And I was quite interested to flip through this to see if it was just an empty folder or if it had anything in it. And it looked to me like it was legitimate documents that had become declassified, but back in the day were classified. And it talked about the evidence of the Soviet nuclear blast that occurred. And so I was impressed that they went into that level of detail to have that material, although you never saw that. The scene was very, very brief, and it happened so that you could never see that I was holding anything. And in fact, the only thing you could see of me in that scene is when Robert Downey Jr. comes in. You could see me off to the right a little bit, and then as other time, and in the script they go back and forth to this scene because the scene. A couple of other things come to mind. One, it was shot twice, and they didn't explain while we were filming why they went to the trouble of shooting it twice. But now that I've seen the movie once, I understand why they shot it twice. They shot it once in black and white, and they shot it another time in color. And when you see this scene in black and white, that is the perspective of Robert Downey Jr., of Louis Strauss, retelling this meeting and retelling what happened when they're discussing the Soviet blast and the need for the U.S. to develop a hydrogen bomb. So essentially, this was an important history because it was literally the beginning of the arms race between the U.S. and Russia and the start of the Cold War. Let's see. Anything else to add there?
I can jump in.
Yeah, jump in.
So yeah, I will now sort of briefly describe like the scenes where I was in, and I think then we can just open up to questions, right? If you have anything. So basically, I was part of it for about 10 days. I was part of filming both up in um, uh, right across from Ghost Ranch, right, at the outdoor scenes, and I was also here for about another 4 or 5 days, right. So total, I think about 10 days. Then I was also supposed to be there for the Belen, where they were shooting the Trinity test, but I'm not going. But anyway, so 10 days, and I got to see both Killian, Matt Damon, Emily Blunt, and a bunch of the other actors. And yeah, but I mean, in general, you can actually see me in 3 scenes in particular. So if you saw the movie, then the scene where they were basically discussing the merits of dropping the bomb on Japan, right? Where at first it's this young actress, right, starting the scene, and then Robert Oppenheimer walks in, and and then everything goes quiet. Which was actually filmed at the Unity Church here in Los Alamos. And then the 2 other scenes, the cool scene and the longest one was basically the one in where he, after they dropped the bomb, he walks into this crowd of room, right, with scientists on the bleachers, and that's where he basically talks about how proud he is of the work. And the interesting thing is that scene was filmed over 2 days, right? So just basically there's, right, if you sort of look at it, right, there's so many different versions of the scenes, right? There was all the scenes where everything is quiet, right? So they actually had us clap, pretend to clap, and they would film that. If you remember, there's a lot of sort of stomping feet that you can hear in the movie, and that's they recorded all that there, right? So a lot of the stomping that you can hear either during that scene or during the scene, I think, where they discuss the dropping or the detonation of the Soviet bomb, right? All that stomping was actually just recorded basically during that scene, and so it was. It took us about several hours, 5 hours of us doing it repeatedly, sort of the stomping, and by the end your lower back was just killing you. And so but yeah, right. And so then the different versions of the scene, right? So they actually started sort of snowing would look like ash, right? So that right, his flashbacks, right, to sort of like his guilt of dropping the bomb, right? Then basically on the second day, there was a scene where you saw where he actually stepped into a burnt body, right? So so it's pretty kind of incredible just to see how much goes into filming one scene, right? What you think or what you see on the screen, takes a minute or 2, right? They took 2 days, and the recording of the effects. And then the other scene that you can actually see me is basically after that, where he's given the award at Los Alamos, that was filmed in front of the Florida Lodge. I'm on actually on the podium with Cillian Murphy, so you can see me in basically sitting next to him when he's giving the speech. So, but the fun thing is that I'm both on the podium and also in the crowd, right? So they filmed the crowd scene up at Ghost Ranch, right? So they were able to gather a lot more extras, right? So that was one of the 2 days where they had a ton of extras sort of gather and film sort of like this crowd scene. But the funny thing is that you can actually see my face in both the looking out at the crowd and me sitting on the podium. So it's sort of a movie mistake, right? The same way they pointed out, the 50 stars on the flag during the scene. You can sort of see me in both scenes. So I'm like, is it time travel or anyway. So, but yeah, so I'm yeah, as I don't know quite what else we could discuss, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask us, if you have questions about the process, unless you have anything, feel free to add more. But there's a lot more I could talk about. I love talking about it because it was one of the coolest things. I do really consider my work cool at the lab, but this is just so unique that. But yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Sorry.
I'd like to know if you intend to be an extra again, and is there going to be maybe a sequel to this?
I not necessarily, right? I mean, it was a unique experience that was really cool. But being an extra is actually very boring, right? It's like, right. So some of the days are you get to do a lot of stuff, right? But some of the days, like, luckily there were a few days where I wasn't necessarily called in, but then the people told me, or some of the other extras just said, were cold. We were sitting outside, right, because they were filming outside of the women's dormitory, right next to bathtub, right, and so they were filming some of the indoor scenes, like I think where um, Oppenheimer is showing somebody, like all the scientists, they're doing their things in different room. But from what I understand, the extras were there, but they were not called in to do anything, right? So they were sitting outside in a cold from 5:30 in the morning for the whole day, and they just were bored, right? So it was a cool experience, unique. It was a Christopher Nolan movie, but I mean, if there was anything, something similar, something really special, something that I think would be meaningful, right? Just because it's such a big part of the history of the lab, maybe. But in general, no. I mean, yeah, it's. I think yeah.
We did have one other extra in this scene, and during the lunch break, I sat and talked with him a little bit. He was a retired police officer from Minnesota who moved to Albuquerque, and he was sharing with me, because he knew that I had recently retired, all of the work he has done as extra. And he got a big kick out of this, and so he was enrolled with two different casting companies, and he had extra work lined up every month for the whole rest of the year, just about. And he enjoyed getting out of the house. It was, he said sometimes it was boring. He played the role of a FBI agent, and they gave him a dummy gun, and he stood at the door to this conference room. I don't think we ever saw him. I don't see the camera pan by him, but he was supposed to be a guard at the door where these scientists were having this discussion, which I presume again was in D.C., where it was meant to be portrayed. And he enjoyed doing this. I don't think I will again. I have too many other interests, and I don't want to be caught up spending a lot of time being bored when I could be out hiking or doing other things. And so I may not do it again, but I enjoyed this one opportunity to do it. And I had another recollection from that day of filming, and that was Oppenheimer had one of his flashbacks during that 2 day of filming, and it was while he was standing, and he was off to the side and lost in thought, and they had to call him Opie Opie to get his attention back. But Christopher Nolan spent about 30 minutes just doing a close-up filming of him, and they used a those computer projectors that you use to give a PowerPoint presentation, and he had a little Apple computer, and it had this projecting this designs that were flowing and moving and around like that. And I can see now in the movie, you know, when he has some of these flashbacks, there are these abstract designs that are happening behind his head. And I see now how they did that. It was just because he didn't use computer CGI, you know, it was all old fashioned. And so he projected this on a curtain that had this interesting pattern. They had the camera right up in front of him very close, and this was going on behind him. And that's how they did that that effect. And so it was interesting to see how they did that, and then to see the finished product. Any other questions? Yes, please.
What was it that he stepped in that in the Fuller Lodge scene that he was flashback or whatever?
What was he stepped in?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
say
so
a body?
it was right. So it was supposed to be a burned dead body, right, from Hiroshima or Nagasaki, right? So basically something that was burned by a nuclear explosion.
So I saw it twice. I couldn't make out what that was.
Yeah, so that basically was meant to be
black or brown.
Yeah,
or something.
yeah. True, but that was basically meant to be a person, and he stepped on their head or into them, right? So it's basically a burned dead
Right,
body,
thank you.
and he was meant to as sort of it's meant to represent, right? I think his guilt of killing
Yeah, I got that.
these people, and so that's what I don't know. But
I've wondered about this. I mean, when I've seen information about the filming of movies, whatever, and the fact that it's done in these little choppy units, but then it's all put together, and just what is that like for the actors? That how can they just in that one moment, do the intensity or whatever, and then boop, that's it. And then, it's put together. So I was wondering for you, as extras, was it really interesting to you to see how these little choppy scenes were filmed, but then in the movie, how it all comes together? And that, wow, that, they can.
definitely, right? I mean, it's such a unique thing. Well, right, it's such a different thing to be part of, right, the filming and sort of like be in the scene, right, but then actually see, right, what happens, like the final product, right? Because I had no idea, right, that this is going to be sort of time jumping in time, right? Because I think the first scene is them interrogating Cillian Murphy, right, Oppenheimer, and then you then sort of go to the past, right? I at first maybe thought it would be sort of linear time, right? But yeah, right. And so just the creative process of seeing, how all of it is put together, right? Now that I've seen the movie, it's just mind blowing, at least to me. So yeah, so it's definitely an amazing experience to sort of be part of it, but then sort of see the final product, to see how the things that you were in actually ended up being part of the movie, right? Some things were shorter than you thought, some things were longer, and yeah, so it's definitely really interesting. And yeah, right, it's definitely interesting also just to observe the actors, right? Just to see, Cillian Murphy, for several days, and see how he would say the same dialogue, like 50 times, like, because that scene, where at Fuller Lodge we were for 2 days, he gave the same dialogue, 50 times, and it just, yeah, it was definitely a privilege. So yeah.
I'll just, I had very similar experiences myself, but I did see a little clip on the internet, and it may have been Entertainment Weekly or something like this, but it was an interview right after the premiere of the movie, and it had the main actors and the director, and the actors themselves who were there for the for every scene. They expressed very similar opinions that they were themselves blown away with the final product of the movie, that they just couldn't see the same vision that the director could see, as he's doing all these scenes. Because, when this camera goes by, you can never tell, are they getting the whole room? Or are they just getting the face of a single actor? What's happening in the pan? All sorts of things that go into so many different details. And yes, the final product is just amazing to see. And while you're watching it, it's hard to understand how that scene is going to end up on film, because you're not there in the director's mind, and you're not there behind that camera. And so even the actors themselves were surprised by the finished product. And so I thought that was interesting.
So this kind of fits and kind of doesn't. But after seeing the movie and knowing you were a part of it, what do you think of Oppenheimer and the history that was there, and him as a person? What do you think? And do you think the film had some accuracy to it?
I did read the book that the film was based on, American Prometheus. And I thought that the film did a very good job. Clearly, the book goes into much more detail, and I highly recommend it. It's a fascinating book to read, and you learn a lot more about Robert Oppenheimer's character. Although it does go into quite a bit of detail of him losing his security clearance, and how Louis Strauss sought to seek revenge on him by being belittled in public beforehand, and how that came back to bite him later on when he was not confirmed to be a member of the cabinet in the Senate. And so I felt that Oppenheimer was wronged by having his security clearance taken away, and I wish that he could have lived to see the day that it was reinstated, and to see how he is regarded now. One of the highest honor that you can have at Los Alamos as a postdoc, if you're brought in hired, and it's only about maybe 3% of postdocs are Robert Oppenheimer postdocs, and that's a great honor to be a Robert Oppenheimer postdoc. And it'd be nice for him to live to have seen that as well.
So, I mean, I have quite a different, I think, views. So I haven't read the book before, right? I'm also originally from Europe. I'm from Slovakia, right? So growing up, I didn't quite learn about the history as much about the Manhattan Project, right? As I'm assuming, the kids here in high schools do. And so I knew he was quite an important figure, brilliant physicist, right? But from the brief, from me being in the movie, right, and just being in Los Alamos itself, right, and learning about its history, I would sort of share the opinion on Oppenheimer, right, that he was wronged, and it would have been great to see that, brilliant man, wronged, but then it would have been really nice to if he could have seen, yes, him getting reinstated with his clearance, and how his legacy now lives on. So yeah.